In this section, I will go over a case study in which I edit a resume using course concepts. In this particular example, the client currently had 3 separate jobs to make a livable wage with no benefits. After editing the client's resume, he landed a full-time job that offered a 50% increase in annual income and full benefits. It was truly incredible and fulfilling to see how much you can accomplish once you are armed with this knowledge. For confidentiality purposes, I've changed some of the information. The overall process for this client was 2 resume lookovers, so you can see the 3 iterations of his resume. You will see the original, the rough draft, and the final product. Admittedly, a resume should have more than 2 lookovers before it is ready to be sent out. However, each draft will provide a marginally less benefit over time, and thus these 2 edits will show more changes between versions as opposed to the change between draft 8 and draft 9. These edits were a combination of me rewriting some bullet points or me giving tips on how the client should rewrite the bullet point. If a bullet point is too vague or very specific to the industry, I do my best to provide insight, but in the end, the best changes will come with the client's input. I would like to add that it's your resume and you are free to ignore my advice. You will see that many things I recommended were not implemented. Ultimately, it is your resume, and it is up to you to decide what advice you want to follow. At the first glance at this resume, you can see that formatting is already an issue. The bullet points for experience, education, and additional are all lined up differently. If you're the hiring manager viewing hundreds of applications that all look similar, and you see a candidate that is unable to make all the bullet points line up properly, you will have the complete right to discard that applicant and look at more detail-oriented candidates. Also, all the bullet points do not make it to the end of the margin, making the resume less aesthetically pleasing. So now, from top to bottom, let's dive in. There is a summary section, which I personally do not believe is needed. I think this is room for you to make an error, and most of the material you will include in the summary you can put in a cover letter. This is a personal preference, and moving forward, the client does not take my advice. Given the situation, we work together to improve the message. For experience, this candidate has currently had 2 jobs that are the same, but at different companies. The first thing to fix is the date of employment. Instead of August 2014, you should include present. This would make it clear for the hiring manager what the applicant's current employment situation is like. Again, clarity is a core principle of this course. If the hiring manager has to guess, you're doing something wrong. Do yourself a favor and get rid of any ambiguous points. First bullet point: no quantifiable result, even though it is something you can quantify. Bullet point 2 is super long and multiple sentences. While it is okay to have multiple sentences if you feel it would read better, it is not traditionally the best practice. In this case, I told the student to condense the bullet point into 1 sentence. Also, this bullet point is vague, the context is off. Instead of through original and innovative methods, most congruent to the interests and concerns of our group, you should explicitly say what those innovative methods were. This gives the recruiter more of an image to work with, as opposed to guessing what those original and innovative methods are. Bullet point 3 has the same edits as well. Rather long and rather vague. Show something specific for the context, and then it will make the results easier to write. Bullet point 4 is vague, but not super long. But the result seems like something that is very important in his industry, so it should be kept. Experience 2. Bullet point 1 is very good. It has ACR, but the results just need to be quantified to make it better. For bullet point 2, the action word could be stronger. Design seems more like a soft skill, as opposed to something stronger like spearheaded. Also, the context is too vague. This experience only has 2 bullet points, which is fine standing alone. However, as a whole, this resume only has 2 experiences. So in this case, you should at least have 3 bullet points for each. Otherwise, you should include another experience. Education. This section is truly lacking. This client did not complete university, so this section is going to be weaker than experience or additional. However, it is still important to improve it. Once formatting is fixed, I recommend that the student add relevant coursework that applies to youth engagement. Even if he doesn't have a degree, it does not mean he hasn't spent time learning relevant topics. Additional. For additional, sometimes it's better to show and not tell, meaning that instead of saying you are an accomplished musician, you can just say what those accomplishments are. So in this case, I recommended that he list the instruments he can play, in the hopes that the interviewer is either impressed or plays the same instrument. The second additional point should list the technologies that he is skilled in and experienced in. Overall, this resume covered the basics, with formatting being the only egregious error. As you can see, the bulk of the edits dealt with bullet points. The key takeaway from this review was that context needed to be specified. Without context, the result is irrelevant. Now, let's go see what improvements were made.